Hello friends, welcome back and thanks for watching my videos. Happy New Year to everyone, all of my subscribers and viewers. तो आज हम नया साल शुरू हो गया तो हमारा नया साल का फर्स्ट वीडियो रिकॉर्ड करने वाले हैं और मैं आप सबको फिर से रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ प्लीज़ काइंडली सब्सक्राइब कीजिए चैनल को और कमेंट्स कीजिए, अपने व्यू पॉइंट बताइए, लाइक कीजिए वीडियो को। और आज का जो हम टॉपिक डिस्कस करने वाले हैं या वॉच करने वाले हैं बेसिकली टाटास का जो हमारा जो एयर इंडिया था इंडिया का, वो पहले टाटास का ही था, बाद में गवर्नमेंट ने लिया था, अभी फिर से वापस टाटास के पास चला गया। तो उसका एक ब्रीफ बैकग्राउंड कि क्या था, क्या कैसे वो चला गया, अभी कैसे आ गया और होपफुली एयर इंडिया का फ्यूचर बेटर होगा। तो विदाउट वेस्टिंग एनी टाइम लेट्स स्टार्ट द वीडियो। 1 2 3।
Do you believe in karma? Maybe, maybe not. But for the Tatas, things seem to have come a full circle. After being forced to hand over their healthy Air India baby to the government for a then generous sum of 2.8 crore in 1953, the government now sold it back to them, broken and stricken, for 18,000 crore. A pity really, because at one time till the 1980s, Air India was among the 3 most profitable airlines in the world. So how did an airline that earned 333 crore of profit in 91-92 start making losses of nearly 20 crore every day? Come on with me to the 1930s. JRD Tata, a big aviation nut and India's first licensed pilot, is rightly credited for founding India's first airline. However, it was a certain Neville Vincent, a former World War I pilot who came to India in the 1920s and convinced JRD to start an airmail service that eventually turned into Air India, and to whom JRD graciously referred to as undoubtedly the founder of Indian air transport. Initially, the duo's plans were rebuffed by British officials.
Why should we waste our money on funding an airline? There is no need for it anyway.
It was only when Sir Dorabji Tata intervened,
We don't want your money, just give us permission,
that Tata Airmail was born, with the purchase of 2 single-engine Pusmoth aircrafts, making its first flight from Karachi to Mumbai via Ahmedabad on October 15, 1932. Conceived as an airmail service, it picked up international mail from Karachi and brought it to India and vice versa. As can be expected, JRD Tata himself piloted the first flight, using railway lines below to navigate his flight path. When in doubt, he whipped out a bi-grade slide rule from his shirt pocket to help him maintain course. Each flight took around 8 hours, as the moths could fly at an average speed of just 50 miles, 80 kilometers an hour. In its first year, Tata Airmail flew more than 300 flights between Karachi and Mumbai, carrying 10 tons of mail, as well as 155 passengers who sometimes had to sit on mail bags since the planes were pretty small back then. His venture had a substantial profit of 60,000 in its very first year of operation, a healthy return of 30% on his 2 lakh rupee investment. Talking about a healthy return on investments, Bizbo would like to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Small Case. Small Case has a unique method of investing in the stock markets, suitable even for seasoned investors. Since this story is on the Tatas, let's say you were bullish on the Tata Group as a whole and wanted to invest some of your money in Tata Group companies. You would notice that some of these stocks are very highly priced, and that with the 50,000 you have, you can probably buy just a few shares of one of these companies. But if you were to invest via Small Case, they already have a specially designed fund on only Tata stocks, created and managed by SEBI registered financial experts, where you can own almost all the Tata stocks in a predefined weightage. Now comes the fun part. Suppose you don't want any particular script, you can sell and replace it with another and change your weightage. Something you can't do with mutual fund investing. Like this, you can invest in group or sector specific trackers, like an EV specific fund, unicorn specific fund, dividend specific. There are unlimited options. Users can also create their own stock and ETF portfolios and invest seamlessly with their broker account. Explore more on www.smallcase.com or click on the link provided in the video description section. Seeing the growing need for personal transport, JRD started commercial operations with a 6-seater Miles Merlin. flying Bombay to Trivandrum with a round ticket costing 256 rupees, equivalent to over 15,000 rupees today. 6 years later, the name of Tata Airmail was changed to Tata Air Services, then Tata Airlines, and then after it went public in July 1948 to Air India International. Bombay to London in June 1948 was its first international destination. But that's about as high as it flew under the Tata label, as after independence, the newly formed Nehru government clipped its wings by first acquiring 49% of the airline and then in a wave of socialistic policies going all the way and nationalizing it. Air India was not the only airline to be nationalized. All the 9 airlines that existed at the time were merged under either Indian Airlines or Air India International. Overnight, the business of running airlines was made illegal, with a minimum fine of 1,000 rupees per flight or imprisonment for up to 3 months or both. JRD looked at nationalization as an act of betrayal, especially since Nehru had openly been a fan of his accomplishments.
I am very impressed how Air India has changed India's aviation sector.
Therefore, it was all the more humiliating to him personally.
How can the government take such a major step without even talking to us first?
When he tried to bring it up with the Prime Minister,
Pandit Ji, what are your plans for the airline industry?
the moment JRD tried to steer the conversation there, Nehru would turn and look out of the window.
Okay, I get the message. You aren't even willing to discuss it.
But to Nehru's credit, he realized the value JRD brought to the table and appointed him chairman of both Air India and Indian Airlines. Soon services were introduced to Bangkok, Hong Kong and Tokyo to the east, Nairobi in Africa, Rome and Paris in Europe, and to New York, among many others. For 25 years, JRD nurtured the airline, setting and maintaining high standards as passengers enjoyed its excellent services. All this while managing 50 plus companies as chairman of Tata Sons. He simultaneously dedicated half of his time to Air India without taking a penny. There were many a times when he personally inspected flights, making notes of tiny details that needed to be fixed, from the color of the air hostesses' saris and hairstyles, to the level at which wine was to be poured into a wine glass, 150 to 180 ml, and how to hold it at the stem between thumb and forefinger, to the availability of toilet paper and lavatories on board. JRD was involved in everything. On one occasion, he rolled up his sleeves and helped the crew clean a dirty aircraft toilet. If he saw a dirty airline counter, he would request a duster and wipe it himself. Air India was truly a palace in the sky, offering luxury travel and world-class food like caviar on ice. So exclusive was their first class that the King and Queen of Sweden flew Air India, as did Pope Paul VI when he travelled to India in 1964. In 1955, Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai specifically asked for it to travel to Indonesia, as China did not have the required long-distance aircraft. Air India was also the first Asian airline to induct a jet aircraft in its fleet, the Gauri Shankar, a Boeing 707-420. However, the most enduring legacy of Air India has to be its mascot, the Maharaja, an icon that has survived its master's many upheavals. Created by the commercial director of Air India, Bobby Kuka, and Umesh Rao, an artist with the advertising agency JWT in 1946, it was initially used only internally on the airline's memo pads, but it soon began to feature prominently in all of its ads, acting as its unforgettable global brand ambassador. JRD's eyes for aesthetics led to the airline acquiring over 4,000 pieces of artwork from the likes of Jatin Das, Anjali Ella Menon, MF Hussain and VS Gaitonde, creating a limited edition ashtray depicting a shell-shaped center with a serpent entwined around its perimeter, supported by 2 surrealist elephant heads and a swan, designed by none other than Salvador Dali himself, the famous surreal artist. The swan upside down becomes an elephant's head, and the elephant's head inverted, a swan, who, maverick that he was, asked for a baby elephant as payment, which was actually delivered to him in Spain. However, the fate of Air India was about to change. Its Emperor Ashoka, their first Boeing 747-200B that was in use for over 6 years, crashed into the sea off the coast of Bombay just 101 seconds after takeoff on New Year's Day of 1978, killing all 213 passengers and crew. Within a month, the then Prime Minister Morarji Desai unceremoniously dropped JRD from the chairmanship of Air India and the directorship of Indian Airlines. JRD was at Jamshedpur when he came to know about this 2 days later.
Good morning, Mr. Tata. As a courtesy, I must inform you that the Prime Minister has appointed me as the new chairman of Air India.
The tastelessly taken action had a deep impact on the morale of Air India employees, as both the cabin crew and the Officers Association protested. JRD's belief that the government would not be able to run an airline efficiently seemed prophetic. Officials of the Ministry of Civil Aviation and IAS Babus having little or no aviation experience began handling its day-to-day operations. Travelers from Kerala to the Middle East were made to travel via Mumbai on flight timings that were not even synchronized, adding 8 to 16 hours of total travel time. Important positions like sales and marketing and commercial operations were handed over to people from outside the industry. Indira Gandhi, who had once written a heartfelt note to JRD Tata while aboard an Indian Airlines flight,
Air India must be as sad at the parting as you yourself. You were not merely chairman, but the founder and nurturer who felt deep personal connection.
reappointed the deposed founder on the board of both airlines when she returned to power in 1980. He continued in that position till the age of 82, when then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi appointed Ratan Tata as chairman, who resigned after a short 3-year stint. Almost immediately after their departure, Air India's fortunes plunged, losing 181 crore in 97-98, then bouncing briefly back into profits from 2002 to 2005. Then it got hit by the effects of a nuclear bomb, almost literally. In July 2005, a nuclear deal was concluded between India and the US, where the latter agreed to full civil nuclear cooperation with India. However, both leaders faced backlash in their respective countries, with the BJP and the left even trying to pull down the UPA-1 government, an incident covered in detail in the Hindi movie Accidental Prime Minister. Meanwhile, George W. Bush faced flack in the US Congress, who wanted to sanction India as it had not signed the Non-Proliferation and Comprehensive Test Ban treaties. So as a quid pro quo for waiving any NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission action against India, Bush nudged Singh. You've just placed an order on Airbus for 10 aircrafts. Isn't that correct, Mr. Prime Minister? If you were to place an order on Boeing instead, I could convince the US Congress not to sanction India. So 111 aircraft were ordered from Boeing when the requirement was just 10, putting a huge burden on debt and interest payments. But it was the merger of Indian Airlines with Air India that was the final nail in Air India's coffin. What was supposed to increase operational efficiency actually hastened the demise of both of them. Bisbo has done 2 earlier videos on Air India, the first that detailed its problems and the second the government's failed attempts to find a buyer in earlier rounds. Now with the airline back with the original owners, the Tatas will own 100% of Air India and its low-cost arm Air India Express, plus 50% in the ground handling joint venture Air India SATS. Will be handed over 141 planes, some in dire need of maintenance, rights to 173 destinations including 55 international ones, and last but not the least, ownership of the iconic Maharaja mascot. The balance debt of 46,000 odd crore will be absorbed by the government, that when adjusted against assets worth about 14,000 crore, leave it with a net liability of around 29,000 crore. For Ratan Tata, who is himself looking to leave behind his legacy, this is an important achievement. Welcome back, Air India. Are the good times about to roll again? Postscript. In October 1982, the then 78-year-old JRD, who had only the previous month suffered from angina pain, reenacted his solo flight aboard a Pusmoth from Karachi to Bombay in commemoration of the golden jubilee of its first flight. Even as a battery of well-wishers and journalists gathered to report the historic event, BBC correspondent Mark Tully asked tongue-in-cheek, "So do you expect to be around for the centenary year of India's civil aviation?" "Of course I will be there. You see, I believe in reincarnation. Karma, anyone?" Bisbo's Limerick. An airline was created with blood, sweat and tears, nurtured by one man for 25 years, then taken away, its business astray, returned to the source with many arrears. You will also find these sources listed in the video description section.
चलिए ख़त्म हो गया वीडियो. वाओ व्हाट अ वीडियो, मस्त वीडियो था. फाइनली एयर इंडिया इज़ विद द राइट ओनर्स. होपफुली प्रॉफिट में रन करेगा. एंड पर डे 20 करोड़ लॉस इज़ अ ह्यूज लॉस एक्चुअली. पर डे 20 करोड़ जो जाता था मेंटेनेंस पे, मुझे पता नहीं था इतना पैसा जा रहा है करके. तो हाँ, मैंने काफ़ी एयर इंडिया से ट्रैवल किया है. अभी भी खाना अच्छा रहता है, लेकिन सर्विसेज थोड़ा पैथेटिक है. टाइमिंग भी मैंने खुद तो फेस नहीं किया टाइमिंग डिले का, लेकिन मेरे काफ़ी फ्रेंड्स ने फेस किया है टाइमिंग डिलेस का. अगर आप यहाँ से फॉर एग्जांपल यूरोप से डायरेक्ट फ़्लाइट लेते हैं, मेरा तो डायरेक्ट फ़्लाइट रहता है बेंगलुरु तक, तो मैंने 2-3 बार ट्रैवल किया है लेकिन कभी ऐसे फेस नहीं किया. हाँ, एक बार ये फेस किया कि सीट बहुत ही ख़राब था और बाकी कोई सीट अवेलेबल भी नहीं था. होपफुली ये सब चीज़ें फिक्स हो जाएंगी अब वंस इट इज़ टेकन ओवर. आई थिंक दिसंबर में हो गया तो नए साल से तो अब वो पूरा एयर इंडिया सब कुछ टाटा का प्रॉपर्टी हो जाएगा. तो होपफुली अच्छा चलेगा. एंड आई विश ऑल द बेस्ट टू एयर इंडिया. फाइनली गवर्नमेंट कंट्रोल से गया. तो पता नहीं नेहरू जी के दिमाग में क्या था, क्यों सोशलिस्ट पॉलिसी अपनाया. और इनफैक्ट इंडिया का जब इंडिपेंडेंस हुआ बहुत सारे कंपनीज थी इंडिया के अंदर, तो जैसे ही इन्होंने सोशलिस्ट पॉलिसी अप्लाई किया, बहुत सारे कंपनीज छोड़ के चली गई. तो इनफैक्ट हमारा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बेस बहुत अच्छा था पहले आज़ादी के बाद, तो उल्टा हमने उसको डिस्ट्रॉय किया 90s तक. और 90s में फिर से हमने वापस थोड़ा लिबरलाइजेशन की तरफ गए और हमारा इकोनॉमी चलने लगा. और इवन 90s ही लास्ट था जब हम IMF की तरफ भी गए थे लोन लेने के लिए. उसके बाद हम कभी गए नहीं. तो क्यों इतना रॉन्ग पॉलिसी लिया था तब, क्यों उनके दिमाग में क्या था, मुझे तो आज तक समझ में नहीं आता. लेकिन दे रहा है दुरुस्त है, अभी अच्छा चल रहा है. लेकिन लोग अभी भी चिल्लाते हैं कि तुम सब प्राइवेट क्यों कर रहे हो, ये बेच रहे हो, वो बेच रहे हो. तो गवर्नमेंट का काम नहीं रहता ये सब करना, एयरलाइन चलाना, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का देखभाल करना. तो मेरे हिसाब से तो प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स होने चाहिए, लेकिन उनके ऊपर रेगुलेशंस और उनके ऊपर एक कंट्रोल होना चाहिए गवर्नमेंट का. ऐसा नहीं कि मतलब फुल फ्री छोड़ दो उनको या कुछ भी करे तो चलेगा, ऐसा नहीं. लेकिन प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स को आप अलाउ करेंगे तो कंपटीशन होगा और सर्विसेज अच्छे मिलेंगे लोगों को, मेरा ये मानना है. चलिए आपका भी व्यू पॉइंट बताइए. एंड थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग द वीडियो.